Latria. Once an ivory tower, now the city has become the stuff of nightmares. New prisoners are locked up and tortured in the prison of hope. Then they're told to seek redemption up above. There is none. Instead, gargoyles carry them to the upper city, where they will inevitably join the rest of the bodies dumped into a sea of flesh and blood. Tentacles absorb this repulsive mix of remains, feeding a gargantuan ball of flesh. This heart of Latria spits out chimeric abominations, each with the face of a former prisoner contorted in agony. Behind it all is the Golden Elder, a former noble. Consequences be damned, he will have his revenge. In Demon Souls, magic benefits from one's intelligence. The more clearly you are able to comprehend something, the more powerful your magic becomes. Latria clearly had a focus on science and experimentation. You can look to the equipment in their towers and even the pictures on their archstone for proof of that. It set them apart from others known to have practiced the soul arts at this time, like the Monumentals, who practiced through faith. That's not to say that Latria didn't have a culture of worship as well. They absolutely did. Look at what's depicted above the Queen's throne. A woman representing royal authority, her body emanating light while a Pegasus glides through the heavens, all symbols of divine and spiritual freedom. The Queen was the holiest of holies, a being of supreme magical and, therefore, divine power, the bridge between man and God. Perhaps Latria was looking to cross that bridge. The researchers and sages of the Ivory Tower elevated themselves to aristocrat, believing that they deserved to enjoy the finer things as well, for who better to stand beside the Queen than men of similar knowledge?
I was once the wife of nobility, and I have some nice things to show for it.
To be clear, these were not royals, they were nobles, not family, but clan. Thus, since they weren't born into power, it was possible to obtain it. One way was to strive to be intelligent, like the Queen, but another was to simply become wealthier, though when your currency is souls, that can quickly become a dark desire indeed. These silver bracelets we find in Latria. They boost the amount of souls you receive, and they're an example of how the rich get richer. It was this exact same lust for power that triggered the first scourge. But it wasn't Latria that triggered that. Instead, it was the Monumentals. Luckily, the Old One was sealed away by those same Monumentals, and the world learned to fear the power that they had toyed with. And even though it was the bedrock of their society, Latria joined the world in forbidding such knowledge. The Ivory Tower's magical studies were over, and without something to strive for, they must have been bereft of direction. All they would have had at this point was their queen and a backstabbing aristocracy. During this age, Latria would have become a dangerous place indeed. Assassination is clearly a part of their political culture, as the weapons that facilitate this kind of thing can be found all throughout this city. Nobles also famously took to wearing the red lotus, partly for its beauty, but mostly because it's a quick cure for poison. Even absent magic, man's malice would have remained. Far better suited to this post-magic world would have been Boletaria, whose raw military strength allowed them to expand their borders. Evidence of their spies can even be found within Latria, suggesting that the Ivory Tower might have been next on their list. Luckily for Latria, the soul was rediscovered by Boletaria, who then flourished thanks to its arts. And in order to tip the scales back in their favor, the Queen made the decision to restore her Ivory Tower, restart research which, for so long, had collected dust. Latria would once again become a beacon of academia, and this time there was a wise man named Frake who led the way. A former priest, Frake systemized the soul arts into an academic framework for anyone to learn. He became known as the Sage of Yormadar, which was a distinguished school in Latria where the rich and privileged from all over came to learn the soul arts, including you, if you chose a noble background. Frake would go on to travel, spreading his methods and the fame of the Yormadar school far and wide. Now, in this new world where magic was allowed, Latria had power and influence. We even have evidence of them gifting an ornate weapon and shield to a certain prince of Boletaria when he came touring in its borders. They were finally safe from external forces like Boletaria, but turns out it was those at home that they should have been more concerned about. Among the noble researchers, there was an elderly man who went too far. His obsession with souls crossed the line, and he likely even dabbled in human experimentation, extracting vast amounts of souls from others. You'll recall, it was this exact same thirst for power that awoke the Old One eons ago. So, seeing these acts as depraved, the Queen banished this high-ranking member of the Ivory Tower from Latria. It was the right thing to do, but it couldn't have backfired more horribly, for she filled him with a need for vengeance. And around this time, during his exile, the Old One was awoken, which triggered the second scourge. Demons returned to the land, and it must have been as if, like magic, a golden cloth emerged from the fog and presented itself to the old man. A demon with the power to make the elderly man's dreams of vengeance a reality.
The Queen banished that depraved old man from the land. He returned in strange golden garb with foul demons in tow. They pillaged great Latria, land of the learned, and shut us away in this prison.
Garbed in that regal color, the old man ravaged Latria, killed its queen, and imprisoned all who were a part of her ruling clan. To help enforce his new rule, broken servants channel rudimentary spells throughout the city, sustaining this horrific system of sacrifice. They are protected by former noblemen, who forsook their pride and patriotism to join the winning side. Magicians, who transformed into the octopus-headed jailers, still carrying expensive spices and wearing their old robes.
Since then, they've been feeding off our souls, telling us over and over that if we go above, we will be granted redemption.
The Queen is alive, they say. Right there in the church up above. Go up and see for yourself. She is immortal, rising over and over again. Those who survive the cruel torture and traps arrive to praise their undying goddess, never noticing the servant pulling the strings off to the side. To a hopeless, soul-starved Latrian, it must sound all too tempting. She is the fool's idol, after all. Then come the Gargoyles, the souls of Latrian soldiers and knights that became a part of the local statues. They drag worshippers of this fool's idol up to the horror behind the holy veneer. The old man is making the prisoners take part in his perverse experiments, creating demons and fulfilling his role as an archdemon of the Old One. No one can stop his revenge, not even Frake himself, who returns to Latria, only to be locked up in a cell like the rest.
I was defeated and captured by the Golden Usurper past that cell. Be wary of him, for he manipulates souls. He has power over vile, murky souls, those susceptible to madness and paranoia.
The Elder may be powerful, yet the golden cloth he wears is still a demon. Its power is not his own, and his soul hardly matches its appetite. The cloth continually seeks a new vessel to control, and will abandon the old man to die once it has found that more worthy body. For the goal of demonkind is not to elevate humanity to their status, it's to wipe them out and obscure everything in fog. That's the cost of power here, and for some, it's a worthy price to pay.
Why, you have defeated all the demons, have you not? This ghastly howl. The Monumental has spoken of it before. There is a question I have long had in my mind. It is whether we are right to banish the Old One. But I now have the answer, and it is a resounding no. Listen closely. The Old One must not be cut off from us. If the Candle Maiden tries to entrap it, kill her. Then, absorb the souls of the Old One for yourself. The Old One is an unfathomable vessel. It contains all the souls collected by all demons. You will gain the power of a king, and I will gain knowledge from beyond. And that, my dear friend, is the righteous path. You must not allow trifling matters to dissuade you. The demon soul is ripe for the taking.
Before I go, I just want to give a quick shout out to Audible and talk about an audiobook that I really enjoyed and actually got me into using their service in the first place years ago. So a lot of you probably watched this video on an iPhone, and if you'd like to learn about the man who created the first one, then I can highly recommend Steve Jobs, an exclusive biography by Walter Isaacson on Audible. Have a listen to this sample, and if you'd like to listen to the full thing for free during your free trial, then go and visit audible.com/VaatiVidya or text VaatiVidya to 500 and start your free trial today.
When Jobs arrived in the Atari lobby wearing sandals and demanding a job, Alcorn was the one who was summoned. I was told, "We've got a hippie kid in the lobby. He says he's not going to leave until we hire him. Should we call the cops or let him in?" I said, "Bring him on in." Jobs thus became one of the first 50 employees at Atari, working as a technician for $5 an hour. In retrospect, it was weird to hire a dropout from Reed, Alcorn recalled, but I saw something in him. He was very intelligent, enthusiastic, excited about tech. Alcorn assigned him to work with a straight-laced engineer named Don Lang. The next day, Lang complained, "This guy's a goddamn hippie with BO. Why did you do this to me?"
So I'm sure you've read or heard about Steve Jobs online, at least, and one of the things that always struck me whenever I read about the guy is the comments about him are either completely full of intense praise for him and his accomplishments, or they're dismissive of the man, or calling him a terrible person for how he treated other people. And after listening to this audiobook, I can say that both of those comments are kind of true, but neither are the full picture. This audiobook gives a really balanced perspective into a fascinating person with some interesting flaws and interesting character traits that really allowed him to change the world. And some quotes from this audiobook have actually stuck with me for years afterwards. Remember, your membership also includes access to the Plus catalog, which grants unlimited access to thousands of select originals, audiobooks, and podcasts. No matter what you're into, they've got it. So again, go and visit audible.com/VaatiVidya or text VaatiVidya to 500 to get started today. And thank you again to Audible for sponsoring this video.